Welcome to the Outlander Unhinged podcast, where we talk deep dives, wild theories, and the heart of Outlander. I'm Doreen.
I'm Liz.
I'm Jenny.
And I'm Katie. Grab your snacks, Sassenachs. It's time to talk about Outlander.
Today is our very first episode, and we are so excited for everyone to be here. This has been a passion project of mine for so long, and I'm a bit nervous and emotional that it's finally coming to fruition. So bear with us, okay? Moving on. In today's episode, we are going to start at the very beginning, and we'll be discussing
Outlander Book 1 versus Season 1.
Listen, anyone who knows me knows a good book to show analysis is where I thrive. So I am so excited for this episode. Diving right in, let's start with the first change that stood out to me. In the books, Claire actually buys the vase in the window. In fact, she buys a couple of vases, and Frank jokingly tells her he's glad she did because maybe now she will stop putting flowers inside of his books. Why do we think the show made this change? And how did it impact the overall direction of the story in the show as opposed to the books?
You know, being a show watcher first, I never really picked up on the vase symbolizing home. I got the impression that she needed roots to be put down, but it didn't click even when, what was it, in season 1, maybe by the time they get back to Lallybroch, one of the tenants gifts her, Claire, a vase. And I didn't understand how deep this show was going to go. When I look back, it was so obvious, but in the end, I think it shows the change as Claire being very hesitant to put roots down with Frank.
I love that, Jenny. That's so valid. I think everyone here knows how much I love Frank the Tank.
I brought him along.
I really do love him. And I think being a show watcher first, Claire not buying the vase lends itself to the monologue. We all know that very famous monologue about how even after all the pain and the suffering, she would still make the same exact choice that she made. And as a show watcher, it was almost as if fate and destiny were playing a part to stop Claire from buying that vase because there was something bigger planned. And Claire would have a home with Frank for a period of time, but she wouldn't be home with Frank. And that's a completely different feel.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what you both said. I think the vase represents home for her. She's never really had a home moving around with Uncle Lamb so much. And then she got married to Frank, and then she went straight into war. So I definitely see differences between show Claire and Claire in the books. I feel like in the show, like Jenny said, Claire seemed almost unsure if she should buy the vase, sort of questioning if she would have that life and a home with Frank. Whereas in the books, she's confident, she buys them, and she's really set on having that home with Frank. The show, to me, has some like deja vu moments for Claire. And a big one that I saw was in Lallybroch when she's exploring it with Frank. But I really think that this moment with her looking in the window at the vase is one as well. Maybe some part of her knows deep down that she has this other life to live. And when she receives that vase at Lallybroch, she looks at it like she almost can't believe it, like she's stunned that it's happened. And she looks up at Jamie and she smiles. And it's almost like she realizes that she has finally found her home, but it's not a place like she thought it would be. It's Jamie.
Yeah.
I like that.
That made me feel a bit emotional. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I truly believe the showrunners needed a way to show us just how nomadic Claire was right from the start. By doing this, it made her journey building a life and home with Jamie more fulfilling for the audience. I think that in the book, the reason that she actually bought the vases is because it's right after the war. Her and Frank, at long last, have been reunited. They have a home. And she's genuinely excited to start her life there and with him. It was almost a very special and uplifting realization for her. And as a result of that, as a reader, we left that scene feeling very hopeful. And you have to remember, I read the book long before I watched the show. So when I saw that change, it immediately set a different tone for me in the way that, as opposed to feeling happy at the end of that scene in book one, I left that episode feeling sad and heavy. I also think the show had a job to do in order to make us accept Claire's decision to stay behind with Jamie. Think about it. If the show did not make these little changes and didn't depict Claire and Frank's relationship the way it did, the viewers may have a very different feeling about the decision that Claire made. But in the show, having her choose to walk away from the vase in the first episode, it kind of set the tone for Jamie being built up as Claire's true love and her home. And when in later seasons they had Claire be gifted a vase by a tenant of Lollybrock, they provided us with yet another visual representation indicating Claire's home is with Jamie.
Ah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, like I said, I didn't pick up on it. I think it's a very cool connection.
It
it
is, yeah.
is. It is. And speaking of Frank the Tank, let's
Frank the Tank. Frank the
Frank
Tank.
the Tank.
another one of the big changes is that the show had Frank take Claire to the Stones for the first time. And in the books, it's not actually Frank who takes Claire initially. It's a man named Mr. Crook that Frank and Claire were introduced to by Mrs. Baird at her bed and breakfast. So Mr. Crook takes Claire on a tour, showing her local flowers, and then shows her the standing stones and the forget-me-nots for the very first time. Why do you think this was changed? And do you think Mr. Crook is an important character?
I can only imagine how many people right now in their heads are thinking, is Mr. Crook's Master Raymond? I get that all the
You
time.
know it.
I just think this is an example of the limitations a show has when they're adapting a book, specifically with regards to time constraints and deciding what is and isn't relevant to how they want to tell their version of the story. So that being said, book-wise, I've always thought Mr. Crooks was just a descendant from the Lollybrook housekeeper that we meet in later books, and that Diana just kind of put it there as a little connection or Easter egg to the castle. Because what do we know about Diana, right? She loves making connections all throughout the books, and I always make note of them because it's inevitable that later on it's coming back around. It's so much
Exactly.
foreshadowing all throughout the series. And no, I don't think he's Master Raymond, but I've just debunked that way too many times.
I agree. I think they want to be able to fit as much of the core story in due to time constraints. I don't think he's anyone significant. I think it's just he was the vessel to bring Claire to the Stones in the book. It didn't really matter who brought Claire there. It's just the point that she gets there. Now, do I think Frank had a bigger hand in that? I don't know. We're just going to have to see what comes from the book, what Frank knew, to see where she goes with that. And if he did play a bigger role, investigating the Stones with her there.
Yeah. So in this instance, I have to say, I actually like the show version so much better. I have talked a lot about Frank being an onion with so many layers that you have to peel back to really understand the depth of his character and why he was written the way he was. And I think that Frank in the show wanting to see the witches lent itself so well to the storyline because it really was almost hinting that Frank was one of the people in Claire's life, possibly the person who was the catalyst to set everything in motion. Frank was so mesmerized by the druids dancing, and there was one moment where she was so distracted by the sun, completely feeling like she was an outsider looking in. And it's all very, very interesting to think about because Jamie, Claire, and Frank really are a triad. And I think they're all connected somehow. And it really might have to do with Claire's time traveling.
I agree. And I also agree with Doreen. I think it's more to do that it's one less person they have to work into the show. And I also agree that he's most likely, or at least it's a nod to Mrs. Crook in the books,
Yeah.
which we know is the housekeeper at Lollybrock. And like Doreen said, also like Diana loves to make those connections and give us those little Easter eggs and clues and hints.
Yeah.
And Liz, you know, I love your theory about the triad, and I really think you are spot on with that. Frank plays a huge part in Claire and Jamie being together.
Hate for Frank makes it so hard for me to jump on what I know is probably an accurate theory. You will never make me love Frank.
I think I might. I will never change your mind.
Speaking of Jamie and Claire being together, let's talk about the weddings. Claire and Frank's and Claire and Jamie's. In the books, Claire and Frank are in Scotland for their second honeymoon because that's actually where they were married. In fact, they were married in the same exact church as Jamie and Claire. Why do you think the show removed that particular scene?
Again, I think that this is an example of how the show had limited time and episodes to develop Frank and Claire's relationship, and to some point, Jamie and Claire's relationship. Book one is a large book. It's very detailed, and there's simply no way that they could fit all of that into one season. That being said, right, I think the show really wanted to draw a stark contrast between Frank and Claire's elopement and Jamie and Claire's deeply religious and meaningful ceremony. They needed almost to develop and show Jamie as Claire's one true love. And that scene needed to be iconic. And it was, because I still think about that episode and think of it as one of the most powerful episodes of Outlander to date. And it may have taken away from that if we just saw Frank and Claire having a meaningful wedding in that same location.
I didn't even think about it that way.
Yeah.
I agree, Jenny and Doreen. And I also think that a lot of it has to do with differentiating who Frank and Jamie are as men. Frank spontaneously asked Claire to marry him while they were on the way to dinner to meet his parents. And Jamie married Claire also somewhat spontaneously too, in order to keep her safe and protected. And their marriages and relationships are supposed to be different. And that is something we are supposed to pick up on and understand as show watchers and book readers.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's to show the differences in their marriages. And also, maybe it's just a little far-fetched that they got married in the same exact place. But I also agree that it's meant to show the differences in Frank and Jamie. And Liz, I know you love Frank the Tank,
So much.
but Frank wants to marry Claire right then and there because it's what he wants to do. He doesn't consider if she wanted something different or something more for her wedding, whereas Jamie only worries about making the day right for Claire. He has conditions, but honestly, most of them are for Claire. So I really think this shows the lengths Jamie will go for her.
Yeah, listen,
Like
the only reason why Katie doesn't talk bad about Frank is because she's your best friend, but I will talk bad. I'm just saying.
And when you put it like that, Katie, I mean, it's arguable.
For me, I think it boils down to the contrast between civil marriage and a church marriage. By putting like the story on the screen, they're able to let you truly visualize how deep the religious undertones are throughout the series. In the
True.
Catholic Church, marriage is one of the seven sacraments, and Jamie planned on doing that only once. He took that vow very seriously. I think knowing his own parents couldn't have their own marriage in the church, he also wanted to honor them by doing it, for lack of better words, right. That's the way he could honor their marriage and honor his marriage in the most sacred way that he was brought up to believing in.
I never thought about it that way.
Me
I
neither.
didn't either.
Yeah, the bad
That was
Catholic.
boy, I know this change makes Doreen so mad.
So mad.
But in book one, Claire is traveling with the Mackenzies collecting rents, and she sees the Loch Ness monster, and she recognizes it as a plesiosaur, which is a prehistoric dinosaur. And she immediately starts theorizing about underwater portals for time travel, which she continues to think about throughout the series. So, why do you think they removed this from the show?
Because they were stupid. Okay,
Doreen
no.
was like chomping at the
Sorry.
bit, like, I need to get this out.
I just have to get it out. You're so right, Katie. This one does make me really mad. And I get that it was probably a little too sci-fi for the show, and it would likely be expensive with CGI. But choosing to leave out the Loch Ness Monster, bad choice. There is so much foreshadowing all throughout the books about the significance of caves and water, and it really leads you down a path, specifically in the books, of seeing Claire understand that she may actually be right about a portal under Loch Ness. Now, that being said, the show really did omit a ton of magical elements, and I think they did so in order to appeal to a larger audience. But trust me when I say this, I will never stop talking about the significance of this and water portals as a whole, and I will never stop being mad about it.
All
Never.
right.
Preach, sister, preach.
Doreen is holding back at this point. I want you all to know. It really is a shame they left that part out. Where they really could have inserted it was when Claire and Ned were on the waterfront when they're first having their conversation about poetry and he gives her some blood sausage. They could have slipped that in there. And look, the original thought with the Loch Ness Monster when they found it in Loch Ness, I think it turned out to be like a child's toy. We could have totally fallen for that. You know, no CGI, just stick a toy in the water. It would have been good. And Doreen, to your comment, I completely agree. They left out so much of the magical aspect that when it does show up, show only fans may not pick up on the symbolism. Like I said, I was one of them. I had no idea to look for things like blue light or water or things like that. When you read the book, it's really where it starts to stand out.
Mm-hmm.
Agree.
Yes.
Such a good point.
I agree, Jenny. So this is a part I really wish they would have kept in the show. I feel kind of similar to Doreen. I feel like it was a missed opportunity. Like you said, Doreen, the CGI was probably too expensive, and I understand that, especially with just being in season 1, you know. But
That's true.
I think it was so important because the man that sees her later speaks at the Cranesmere witch trial, and
Yeah.
he believes Claire conjured up the Loch Ness Monster. And I wonder if that's why maybe they replaced the Loch Ness Monster with Thomas Baxter eating the lily of the valley and Claire having to heal him. But I think the show
Wow.
That's a
really,
really good connection that I had never made, Katie.
yeah,
Yeah, same.
I think the show highlights the villagers not trusting Claire and thinking she's a witch not only because she's a Sassenach, but because of her healing abilities and the knowledge she has around that. Whereas the book, like Jenny and Doreen said, had more magic in there as well. The fact that the man thought she conjured up a monster in the lake and that she knows things about herbs and healing that most people in that time don't know, that would really make them wonder if she was a witch.
While we are on the topic of water, the cave scene at the end of book 1 would have been so incredible in the show. I'm sure it was hard to try to fit that in with the storyline, but what a great scene that would have been. It's also where Claire tells Jamie that she's pregnant, which, as we know, didn't happen in the show until Jamie and Claire were on the ship to head to France. I still feel that if Outlander had ended with book 1 at that moment, that would have been a great place to end it. But I am so thankful that Diana had so much more to write.
You know, it's so interesting. Like, I've actually had a lot of debates with people, and listen, Liz, I agree. I wish they had adapted this scene for the show for a couple reasons, but I kind of understand why they didn't as well. So I remember way back, I was in this reading chat group. I'm aging myself here when I was reading book 1, and there was a lot of controversy over that scene in these chat groups for 2 reasons, okay? The first one was because of that little snippet of Claire saying no, that she didn't want to continue, and Jamie just kind of pushing forward. And second, because a lot of people felt it was really unrealistic that Jamie would be so willing after his encounter with Blackjack Randall to just, for lack of better words, get busy with Claire so soon.
Mhm.
Now, for me personally, like, I did not find that the scene was written to be problematic. And in fact, it was for me, one of the first examples that we saw of Claire using her body to heal Jamie. And even though her blue light power wasn't evident and it was dormant there, she didn't understand it yet. But when you
Right.
look back, we understand that that's what she was doing. So I
Absolutely.
do think that the show changing it, they did a good job in the way that they had them reconnecting in Paris and still had Claire using her body to heal him so that it was there. But I liked how they did the hand transition and seeing them step into a new
That was
future together
amazing.
and kind
Mm-hmm.
of finding that new path forward before they physically found each other again.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of
Well,
the
and
best transitions ever, that hand.
oh, it
That was
is.
amazing.
And
Best one on TV.
when I rewatch season two, it's no secret that season two is not my favorite. And I think it's just
Same.
because of the tension between Jamie and Claire, the loss. There's so much that happens. But like you said, Doreen, like when they reconnect in Paris and Claire uses her body to heal him, I think the cinematography on that is so excellent because they used a blue light that
I was
was
just going
in
to
Yes.
blue
say,
light around.
Yes.
My gosh, it was just brilliant.
Yes. With the double doors opening, it was so
Yes.
beautifully done.
And this is what
and
I
then the
love about the
parallel to season B when we get that same lighting when Master Raymond returns, I cannot.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
Yes.
and this is the best part about seeing a book come to life, because you don't necessarily get that in the book. When you suddenly see all these subtle changes, like the blue light, you go back and look and you're like, it was there the whole time. That's amazing. Yeah.
And I love
Agreed.
that they, even though they cut things out, they still add little nods, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, that
hmm
book readers will understand. And I appreciate
Yes.
that.
I read book one after seeing season one. So initially, nothing was missing for me. I didn't know
Mm.
about the cave scene to know that something was omitted. What does stick out for me is that in the book, they seemed on much more solid ground at the end of that book. So if Diana had chosen to end the series right there, they have their happily ever after. When you end the season the way that they did, or they end up in Paris, it just feels like they're uneasy and you feel the tension there.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's just a matter of her not knowing if she's going to go on with another book and you get the happily ever after,
Mm-hmm.
or the show, they already knew where it was going. So you could leave it a little on edge and know that this is just a bump in the road with their relationship. So, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
I definitely see how it could be problematic, but I personally loved it. It's such an intimate moment between them, and I almost wonder if it serves as a symbol of never giving up on each other. Her telling him, no, I can't, and then him saying, you can, for I love you. I think that may have another meaning, not just the action that they're doing. That may be a reach, but it's just a thought. But I know for sure Jamie and Claire are connected physically and they are each other's anchors. And I think them connecting in that way and healing, they knew they had a fresh start. Like Jenny said, they have happily ever after.
Interestingly, on that note, all of the books, if you think about it, end with a happily ever after. And it makes me very hopeful for book 10. So,
Yes,
Yes.
continuing
Diana,
on
come
that,
through. Diana, come
Let's
through.
go.
come through. And continuing on that positive, happily ever after, one of my
Yes.
favorite changes in the show was the ones that they made to Angus and Rupert's characters. In the
Yes.
books, they kind of felt like side characters, right? They weren't as close as they were in the show. And I always wondered, why do we think that they made that change and did we even enjoy it? So for me, I adored them in the show and thought it was a brilliant way to make them almost a brotherly duo.
Yeah.
The way that their characters were fleshed out and developed made us all, and me specifically, feel more connected to them, and I grew to love them the same way that Claire did. I didn't really connect or care about them much in the books at all. And from being honest, I think they added some much needed brevity to a very
hmm
serious show.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Yes.
All right. I loved the addition of the Laurel and Hardy duo being put into the mix. For the younger folks out there, that was a comedy duo, like physical similarities to Rupert and Angus that were like popular during the 20s straight through to the 50s. It
kind of gives a nod to Claire's original timeline, that this is something she would see as familiar. I don't know if that was what their intent was, but that's something that I thought of immediately. Stephen Walters, who played Angus, it was his idea not to have teeth, which I thought that was amazing. He just thought by that point in Angus's life, he would have been in a few fights and more than likely would have lost his teeth by then. I do love the storyline that they get kicked out by a cow, and I will be so sad if that doesn't show up in Blood of My Blood with
Yes.
those two as children. I'll be so sad. So
We need their
get on it,
story. We
Blood of My
do.
Blood.
I agree, Jenny. I hope we get to see that.
Yeah.
This is probably the change I love the most. Angus is a completely different character in the book, at least appearance wise. When I was reading book one, I had a really hard time imagining we show Angus as this huge man.
Yeah.
And later I remembered reading about Rupert's death when they're all hiding in the church together, and I was crying. But I realized I was crying for show Rupert because I was
Absolutely.
so connected to his character. Now,
Yeah.
if I had only read the books, I don't think it would have affected me like that. But I love how they add, comedy and they make us laugh. And I think their friendship and the comedy is a very smart addition to the show because once the battles begin and people start dying, it doesn't really affect us emotionally if we have no connection to the characters. But when a character that we love and we hold dear dies, it really hits home.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Katie,
Yeah.
honestly, I read the book first and I had no connection to them as a character. I agree with
Mm.
what you're saying because when their deaths played out in the show, it was so heartbreaking for me and I did not feel
Yes.
that
Heartbreaking.
in the books. So that's such a great point that you made.
And they
Thank you.
switched so quickly from being like people that you were like, all right, they're not nice to Claire, and I'm getting annoyed. And then suddenly you're sobbing at their deaths. So
Yeah.
it was really interesting how they were able to flip us as viewers into really caring for those characters.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I agree with all of you. I actually loved Rupert and Angus being such big characters in the show, and I think that they also bring a really nice balance of humor that is so very much needed with some of the heaviness in Outlander. And I find Big Head and Lard Bucket to be so similar to Abbott and Costello. They're just two knuckleheads, two comedians trying to find their
Absolutely.
way and stay out of trouble as best they can. And to the Jerseyans who are listening, Lou Costello hails
Absolutely.
from Patterson, New
Patterson.
Jersey.
There's actually a really
Yes.
cool statue of him in Patterson. When I worked there as a paramedic, these are all the really cool things that you find out about towns that you work in and you're
Yeah.
driving around. But very cool to
Yeah.
have a Jersey boy in the house.
Amazing.
Oh, I love that.
Amazing.
Well, speaking of side characters, Leary is actually much more digestible in the books. She does not ask Claire for a love potion. And most importantly, Jamie has no idea that she sent Claire to the witch trial. We also never hear her say that she wants to dance on Claire's ashes. So, why do we think that the show made this change?
I'm so mad right now. Sorry. I get so heated, but I hated this change so much. It made me want to gouge my own eyes out because having Jamie know that Leary sent Claire to her death and him still marrying her is so out of character for who Jamie is. So,
Preach.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
hard to swallow in the books. It was. I'm not going to lie. But it wasn't as unrealistic because you knew Jamie didn't know all of these details. That being
Yeah,
said,
that makes much more sense.
in the show, the change was absolutely ridiculous. And it was just such an unrealistic portrayal because he knew that Leary had sent Claire to her death. The thought
Yes.
that he would ever marry her does not in any way resemble anything that Jamie would ever do.
Yeah. I agree, Dorian. Knowing what we know about James Alexander Malcolm Mackenzie Fraser. His marriage to Laoghaire makes
Smash.
sense in the books. Big smash to James Fraser. He never would have married again if he knew what Leary had been involved with. And I do feel very strongly that the marriage between Jamie and Leary was a long time coming in the books, and also a result of pressure from Jamie's sister, Jenny. In the books, Leary is described to have beautiful rosy cheeks, porcelain skin, golden blonde hair, crystal clear blue eyes. She's beautiful. And now Hudson is too. She's absolutely stunning, just
She's stunning.
gorgeous. But it
Yes.
almost felt, at least to me, that there could have been something brewing between Jamie and Leary if Claire had not shown up in the past when she did.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I totally agree with that. I think Claire showing up truly threw it all off. I think Jamie probably did remember her from, being there earlier, and he absolutely had a plan on that, going in that direction with his love life. Now, don't jump all over me, but I am a Leary show sympathizer. Like,
What?
I know he was like 15, 16 years old. And when I think of like that time period, the violence against women, the violence that she witnessed, even within the Great Hall, like, oh, we just beat people until there's blood drawn. Okay. Like, that's not normal. So I feel like when you grow up in that environment, that might just be your behavior that you go to. You see the adults doing it, so that's what you lead into. I mean, I cannot imagine what I would do today if I got a view of myself at 16. Like, those are the things that keep me up at night. At 3 a.m., you can call me, be like, what are you thinking of? Oh, well, when I was 16, this is what I would be mortified. So, yeah, I don't, what she did, absolutely wrong. Don't get me wrong, but along the lines of every character, there's been, mayhem, murder, and deceit. So it's a lived life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with Doreen and Liz that it does not make sense to include those changes because Jamie absolutely would never have married her if he knew what
Agreed.
she did to Claire. But I also, like Jenny, I somewhat do sympathize for Leary.
I
Oh
know.
no!
Oh no, I just
I,
Jenny and I will show ourselves out.
I'm too empathetic. I can't hate
I
her.
know, I think that's my problem too, is I'm just too empathetic. And she was a love-struck young girl. She
Right.
was
Yes.
really still a child. And that does not mean I condone her actions. I do
Right.
not. But as much as I love Jamie, he really did lead her on.
Yes.
He took a beating for her in the
Mm-hmm.
hall, which was like so heroic.
That's such a
And
big deal.
he was kissing Claire to make sorry, he was kissing Leary to make Claire jealous. So if you're a young girl, I know if a guy was kissing me, I'd assume that he liked me too. So,
Especially
I would
I
in
assume I'm
those
getting married to him.
times.
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah,
especially in that
especially.
time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, that doesn't make sense to try to have someone burnt at the stake. But I think she truly viewed Claire as this evil temptress that came and stole
Yeah.
Jamie away from her. I just really wonder if the whole point of them changing Leary was so that it would be this big shock and betrayal when Jamie does marry her later down the line.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the books, I mean, like Doreen said, it was hard to see, but he had no idea. So it
Right.
kind of made a little bit more sense to his
Yeah.
character.
Yeah.
Kind of like
For
our
sure.
podcast, Leary is a little unhinged.
There you go.
Yes, girl.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. In the books, Mrs. Fitz and Claire have a pretty deep connection. It's actually Mrs. Fitz that teaches Claire about herbology. Do you wish the show would have expanded upon that more?
Yes. I really do love Mrs. Fitz so much. And I think this part of the storyline would have been so cool because it really does add another layer to Claire being able to pass as a healer in the 18th century. Coming from a modern time and Claire doing what she had been doing before she went through the stones, There would have been some knowledge, but there also would have been a lot that Claire didn't know.
I absolutely adore Mrs. Fitz. I think the show tried to make it seem like Claire already had some knowledge of using herbs to heal people, but they probably just cut that out for time purposes, so I understand. But I love that Mrs. Fitz teaches her in the book. And if you think about it, she really plays a big role in Claire being a healer. So it was really sad that was cut out.
Yeah, I agree with all of you guys. I really wish the show would have tapped into this because, like you said, it makes it so much more believable that Claire would be good at healing in the 18th century, especially knowing that she was taking over for Davy Beaton, who left absolutely no notes and was a hot mess express. Okay?
Henry's father's
Sorry.
name is David.
Absolutely.
And he was a horrible healer.
He was. But the theory was fun while it lasted.
Yeah,
Long live
Mrs.
Davy
Fitz
Beaton.
helping her kind of made the storyline more plausible, and it made their connection more special. And I think it also would have lent in their favor to Blood of My Blood and Mrs. Fitz's role with Ellen.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, the one thing that I was just thinking of is that it also gives Mrs. Fitz a motherly role to Claire, which she totally missed out on growing up.
Yeah.
And suddenly here is someone who is helping her bathe, helping her dress, being very attentive to her. That would have been we still did feel that. I'm not going to say that the show did a bad job of that because we still picked up on that, but
Yes.
it really was a missed opportunity to expand upon that. And I get it's because of show and you've got to cut these characters down, not to the bare minimum, but a lot of these side characters end up going that way. I
Yeah.
think cutting the depth of their relationship down to the storylines, Mrs. Fitz was one of my more favorite characters of the show. She's one of my favorite side characters. So yeah, it was a missed opportunity, but I understand why they did it.
Speaking of Mrs. Fitz, you almost have to wonder if she actually liked Dougal in the show. Because, another interesting book to show change is that Dougal's character as a whole is very different. In the books, his motivations for having Jamie marry Claire were so much clearer. His deep loathing for Jamie and his political motivations were also much more fleshed out. Why do you think the show made these changes? And how do you think it impacted how viewers saw Dougal as a whole?
Let's start with Smash, my man Dougal.
Pass!
So
Maybe young Dougal. Maybe young Dougal.
oh my God, you might have to fight Caitlin for him, but I might be in the mix there too. I'm not sure.
Young Dougal is a smash. Old Dougal
He's an
is a
absolute-
pass.
Yeah. Young Daddy Dougal,
But we love-
smash.
But
Graham
we love
McTavish could
we love
never be
Graham,
replaced in that role. Like,
No.
he nailed
He's
it.
incredible.
Oh my God.
We love you,
He makes
Graham.
my
We
heart
really
go
do.
flutter.
I think every single actor picked for this show is perfect.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
could not have picked anyone better.
It's amazing. It's
Agreed.
amazing. You know, we were live this past weekend on TikTok, and one of our followers had asked, "Can you explain why it was a political move for Dougal to marry Jamie to Claire?" A big part of the books that is left out is Colin knew Jamie would be a much better laird than Dougal. He was much more level-headed. We know that Dougal is reactionary, and look, there's a need for that in society to a point, and especially at that point, he needed to be the war chief, and it's what he fit in for. I feel like they tried to, when he married Jamie off to Claire, clearly she was a Sassenach, they thought that he would never be voted in as laird at that point. And in the beginning, I would say yes. As the show and the story goes on, I think people really learn to, like Claire and trust her. So I don't think it would have been as hard. I feel like they tried to get this in two scenes. The first is where Colin gives Dougal the coins back from the rent collection, where they were side collecting for the Jacobite Rising. The other scene is when they go back. Amy says, "Let your brother play the hero, play the rebel. Only you can cry war." And
Yep.
in season 2, when the Bonnie Prince exiles Dougal, but Jamie says, "No, let him be the head of the dragoons and he'll be a scout team." They tried to imply that. I don't know that you would necessarily pick up on how serious of a storyline that was in the show by these two scenes. So
Right.
Yeah.
that's what I think.
That all such valid points. I have a very complicated relationship with Dougal MacKenzie because I really do find him to be a narcissist, but there is a part of him that is so patriotic and loyal to his family.
Right.
Dougal's intentions to have Claire marry Jamie went so far beyond Claire's protection because Dougal had it in mind what he wanted to do because he wanted to secure his position as best he could. Dougal is also intimidated and jealous of Jamie, but maybe there is a part of him that feels an obligation to watch over him because Jamie is his nephew.
Yeah, that's true, Liz.
Absolutely.
So Dougal is such a layered character, and honestly, I really enjoy talking about him. He's always felt like he was in his brother Colum's shadow, and he really plays on our sympathy. We really feel bad for him at times. But on the other hand, we see him making choices and decisions that solely benefit himself. So he comes across as this patriot who wants, a Stuart king back on the throne for the good of Scotland. But really, even if it is for the good of Scotland, he also has interests for that, right? But he never considers what is best for the clan. He considers what's best for him. And we see that
Yeah.
in his arrangement of Jamie and Claire's marriage. He's always wanted Jamie out of the way so that Jamie wouldn't be considered for Laird. And, by him marrying Jamie and Claire, like Jenny said, he knew the clan would never accept a Laird married to a Sassenach. So that automatically boots Jamie out of line, right? But another thing that he wants is Lollybrock. To be able to have those men at his control to fight for the Stuart Restoration. Because when Brian and Ellen were given Lollybrock, when Brian signed the deed, there was a clause that the estate would only pass to Ellen's children. So if Brian had another wife and had children, they could not inherit it. So if Jamie were to die, it would go to Claire because Claire is his wife. And Dougal knew that. So I think the book does an absolutely great job at really getting to the heart of Dougal's hatred and jealousy for Jamie.
I agree with everything that you said. And it brings up a point of something I have been thinking about quite a bit with this new prequel show with regards to how they are going to handle Lollybrock. Because in the main Outlander series, we don't really ever see Dougal wanting Lollybrock. And we also hear Brian talk about how he built Lollybrock with his own two hands. That is a big book to show diversion. And I'm very interested to see how they're going to address that.
Let me add in this. I was thinking myself as of blood of my blood. Now, they were hell-bent on saying that the clan would never vote Jamie in as Laird because he married a Sassenach. Meanwhile, we have Henry waltzing in the room like it's nothing being an Englishman and being like complete control of the Grant family.
Yeah.
How do you explain that?
That will just never happen in the book. That's how I explain it.
Yeah, I agree. These are the things that we think of that become so far-fetched and we can't wrap our head around how one could be okay and the other one can't. So
But I think that Outlander, the main series, not focusing on Dougal's true personality and motivations was kind of a disservice to the viewer. Mostly because they missed out on the deep understanding that book readers have of Dougal's hate for Jamie. Especially because we know that Dougal hit Jamie over the head with an axe and tried to take his life. So he is extremely fearful of Jamie, like Liz, Katie, Jenny, you all said, taking his place as Laird if something happens to Colum.
Yeah.
Now,
and even the gunshot wound in the first scene, that's Dougal in the books. He flat out tells Claire it wasn't one of but they lead you to believe in the show that it was one of the redcoats.
Yeah. So, I mean, in the books, it's very obvious that Dougal just views Jamie as an obstacle in his way of getting what he ultimately wants, which is power. Right? That being said, I think we hit our time for today. I can't believe we actually just finished recording our first episode.
Oh my gosh.
So exciting. I'm so proud of us that we got this done.
We had a little hiccup, but we got over it. And yeah, this is going to be really fun. I hope people tune in.
We thank you all so much for listening to us rant. And if you enjoyed it, keep tuning in. And don't forget to find all of us on our socials, which are shared at the end of this podcast.
We want to thank you so much for being here with us. We really hope you enjoyed spending time with us, and send those emails in because we want to know what you want to know.
Keep tuning in for more Outlander deep dives and theories.
We will see you in the space between.
And until next time, stay Outlander unhinged.